And welcome everyone back to the channel. This is your Walking Dead Season 1 Episode 2 review for Guts. That was the name of the episode, and they literally meant guts in this episode. Oh my goodness. Welcome back everyone. How's everyone? We're past Halloween, we're past it all. We're continuing on here, man, into November, and I'll keep on doing this as long as y'all are gonna keep watching. So, how is everyone though? You know, after watching episode 1, I don't know, this episode, I forgot how much I actually loved season 1. I absolutely adored season 1. Now, you know, I'm the second episode in. I'm getting ready to start on the third, and everything's starting to come back to me. And I'm just like, damn, I really did love this series as a whole. You know, going into the season, watching. I'm sorry, I had a brain fart, but it was great, man. The whole thing is great, and I know it's only 6 episodes, but there's 6 of the most impactful episodes, because I'm sure AMC didn't know for sure if this series was going to go past a season, 1. I'm sure they weren't sure if they were, if they weren't. But either way, here I am. So, quick programming note concerning this. Now, this is 6 episodes. I will go through the first 6 episodes, and then there'll be a bit of a break with these reviews through Christmas. And probably after Christmas is when I'll pick up on Season 2, and I'll work through that. And then I'll probably do something similar, taking another break, and then I'll jump into Season 3. Just to kind of give everyone, like, a tiny little break in between seasons to readjust. And hopefully, if I do my math correctly, I should be through Season 3 by the time we get to Season 11 next year. So, we'll see. Now, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just going to stop here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to jump into this. This was, the first episode I think was like an hour and a half. This one was only about a 45-minute long episode with credits. So it was a much shorter episode, easier to digest, but still a lot happens in this. You establish all these characters. You're getting to know the group a little bit better and learning the dynamics. It is what, I think really turned on people to The Walking Dead, and it's vastly different from what we see now. This was much more character driven. Obviously, the walkers were a big deal at the time. We're learning about the walkers. We're seeing Rick's story continue. We're meeting Andrea, T-Dog, all of them. We're meeting all these characters, and we're starting to see what they're like. And it's just great. And it does really well going between the group who are at the camp and the rest of the group and Rick, who are in Atlanta, stuck in this outlet mall. And just seeing the dynamics of how the group works, even though they're in separate locations. So it's interesting in that way. So the episode, though, does start. You see Amy past Jim, and she walks up to Lori, and she's talking to Lori, mentions the fact that, they're all gone. She's getting some water. Lori's like, hey, whatever, I got this. So Lori tells Dale and Carl that she's going to head out, basically, to go get some water. So she's walking around, and Shane sneaks up on her, and he scares her, and they laugh about it, and they start making whoopee. They start doing, in the words of another YouTuber, the devil's tango. I love that term. But they start doing that, and as they're getting ready to start, she has her necklace on, and it's got the ring, I guess that's Rick's. So they have this look with each other, so she takes it off, and then they commence the sex. They then commence the let's have a fun time. And I think that's really important. I think it's important because it establishes that, yes, she knows that they can do this, but they still feel the need to hide it from everyone. So, I don't know, maybe in a way, even though they think Rick is dead, they still feel wrong about it. They still feel dirty about doing what they're doing. And I like that. So we have the opening credits, which, again, I'll gush about this forever. I love those opening credits. I love that score for this show. But we go back to the overhead shot of the tank. Instead of ascending, we're now descending back down. And we get back into the tank. Glenn, we're back to Glenn talking. We don't know at the time this is Glenn, but we go back to Glenn asking, hey, are you okay in there? Rick and him are talking. He tells him, the walkers are surrounding him. Says he needs to make a run for it, and he tells Rick where to go to escape. So Rick, grabs a few weapons to take with him as he's going to run for this alley that Glenn's directed him to. So Rick, armed with an E-tool and just a Beretta with one clip, 15 rounds, makes a run for it. So he's like cracking some over the head with this E-tool. He gets to the alley and Glenn's there, and Glenn's like, come on, follow me, this way. And they run up the fire escape. So they get up there and you just see a horde of walkers starting to, surround the bottom of this. So there's really no way back down. So all they can do is go up. And Glenn, calls him Clint Eastwood. Asks him if he's the new sheriff in town. And it's just funny. You immediately just see Glenn is so young at this point, and just the dynamic of him and Rick immediately is freaking great. So him and Rick, they meet up back at the mall with Andrea, Morales, T-Dog, and Jackie, who are all there. And immediately Andrea goes into panic mode. She's got a gun pointing at Rick's face, blaming him, saying she's going to shoot him. Morales is like, hey, just stop, like, calm down. And she won't. He's like, well, then pull the trigger. And she doesn't. They tell him what's going on, why they're in Atlanta. They tell him that there is no like CDC set up for people to go to, that didn't happen. You see the horde at the doors banging on it with rocks, so you could tell they're clearly like freaking out. And they start hearing gunshots, so they all rush up to the roof. You see you get to be introduced to Merle. Now and I forgot to mention, Andrea is Amy's sister, in case you guys didn't know. So Merle's up there, and he's shooting at the walkers, and they're like, come on, man, stop, you're drawing him in. And immediately you figure out Merle is no offense, is a country bumpkin redneck who's super defiant and probably was drunk every Friday at the bar being arrested by people like Rick. That was probably his role in society prior to the apocalypse that takes place here in the show. So, but he's taunting T-Dog, saying, oh, that'll be the day. And T's like, you got something to say to me? And he's like, oh, you want to know what the day will be? The day that I take orders from. And he calls T-Dog the N-word. They use the N-word several times throughout this episode. Not a fan of the word, but that's what they did. So, but he starts to beat up T-Dog. Everyone's screaming at him to stop. And he gets up. He says, yeah, how about democracy? Who votes? Raised by show of hands. Who says I'm in charge, basically? And he starts gloating about how he's in charge, that he's going to call the rules. And Rick says something to him. He turns his head, and Rick pops him in the face with the shotgun. Cuffs him immediately. And the interaction between him and Merle, you could tell it's like it's that dynamic. He says there is no N-words. There is no white trash rednecks. He says only white meat, dark meat, and the dead. He says instead of tearing each other apart, we need to work together. And he's talking shit to him, and he's like, Rick's got the gun. He said, maybe respect the man with the gun. He's like, you won't shoot me. You're a cop. He says, no, I'm just a man looking for his wife and his son. And he's got the key. So it's a great interaction. I wish, actually, I got more of this with Merle and Rick. Unfortunately, if you've seen the show, you know where things go with Merle. So you see them looking over, and you get a beautiful shot of seeing all these walkers walking around. And they're still trying to CB the rest of the group using these walkies, but they're not working. You can tell that they're surrounded. Rick's suggesting that they use the sewer systems. So they ask Glenn if he can see any from, the street. And Glenn's kind of like, no, there's none in the alleyway. That must be on another street. Jackie then tells him, all these old buildings, they had areas, to get underground in case of, floods or something or emergency. And they, well, how do you know that? Just, I used to be my job. I was a zoning officer. So they go downstairs and they find it. Glenn says, I've seen this before, but I've never gone in there. So he's going to go down in there, but he says he's not going to take Andrea. He won't take Rick. They doesn't want to get caught up, in case something happens and he's got to run back the other way. So he's going to take Morales with him. So they head down. It's super dark. You see some rats crawling around. It's a sewer, right? Meanwhile, we see the more walkers is now at the door. Andrea decides she wants to apologize to Rick for, pointing the gun in his face earlier. They have a nice little exchange. She kind of, Rick's kind of like, well, if I get us out of here, will that make up for it? And she's like, yeah, not really, but, it'll be a start, right? She, he tells her, well, if next time you're going to shoot me, make sure you turn off the safety. You could tell she's never really used a gun, and she says it was a gift. So he shows her, how to turn the safety off and says if you're going to, when the red's on, be prepared to shoot somebody. T-Dog's still on the roof. He's still trying to reach the group with the walkie. Merle and him are talking. Merle's like, offers to be sunny sunshine, be all positive for him if he just gets him out. Ask him to grab him a hacksaw. T-Dog says he's going to do that. He says, besides, if I get you out and I get you that gun too, you're going to shoot the cop? Morales and Glenn, they find a dead end. It's just these bars. They can't go no further. But just notice there's a walker in there. So we go back down we go up, actually. We go back up into the shopping mall. Andrea's looking at this mermaid necklace, and she's starting to talk about her sister Amy. Says she's still kind of young. She's still into things like this. But she says she doesn't want to take it because there's kind of a cop, standing right next to her. Rick explains to her, he's not a cop no more. There is no law that, those rules just simply don't apply anymore. And you hear glass break as the walkers break through the first set of doors. So it's starting to get intense. That's the thing about this episode. It's contained to this building, but it's still a super intense 40 plus minutes. It's so freaking intense. Morales and Glenn show back up, and they're like, okay, so tell us, is there anything there? He's like, nah, there's no way out. So they're back on the roof. They see a truck they can use. Rick asks, what's attracting the walkers? And this is where we get to the part where the episode name really comes into play. We really understand why it's called Guts. So they drag one of the dead walkers from when Rick and Glenn first showed back up. And Rick's wearing these overcoats and this mask and gloves. They're all wearing gloves. And Rick, he pulls out the wallet after breaking an axe out of the glass. He reads it, and he pays tribute to Wayne, who's got the picture of Rachel with love. And he commences a hacking of the body. He just starts to hack away at this body. And you see, the look on everyone's face where you can see, they feel violently ill. And Glenn even throwing up. And Rick's just going at it. And they all start wiping it all over Glenn, all over him, like guts and body parts hanging off of him. It's freaking great. So Glenn and Rick are going to head for the truck. Going to walk like they're dead. He passes off the key to T-Dog for Merle. So they're out there, and this is one of the most intense scenes of the first season when they're walking by the first group of walkers. And these walkers are walking by him, and they're just looking at him as they walk by. And it's so intense. And the whole time, the first time you watch this, you're just like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? But they get through them. So everyone else is heading up to the roof, and they're kind of watching, but you see a storm starting to come in. You're like, oh, fuck. Now we got a storm. What's going to happen? We cut back to the camp, though. Amy's there. She's pacing. She's worried about her sister. She's worried, they should be back already. Dale tells her, hey, don't worry. Him and Jim are working on the RV, which that fucking RV was always broke. Always something wrong with that goddamn RV. T-Dog, Lori's watching Carl interact with Shane, doing like father-son type stuff, and she's just kind of smiling. T-Dog finally gets through on the radio, telling them that they're trapped, but, they can't communicate. For whatever reason, their side of the radio does not work. So they're all like, did you hear them? They're trapped. They said the shopping mall, and Lori kind of gives Shane a look. He's like, no, he's not. He's like, I'm not letting no one go. We're not going to risk everyone else for them. Amy isn't happy about it. She's like, that's my sister. She volunteered to go. It's like, yeah, and she knew what she was getting herself into, which you understand. You understand Shane's logic. Hey, we can't risk more people going forward just because what's happening. If they're going to figure this out, they got to figure it out themselves. So Amy, pissed off, calls him a son of a bitch, and we go back to them in Atlanta. You got Glenn and Rick still walking through the walkers, and Glenn's like, hey, we're going to make it. And he's like, don't draw attention to yourself. And this one's just kind of really staring at Glenn, and he starts making a face and starts, it was freaking great. But sadly, it does start to rain. The guts of the walkers start washing off of them, so the smell is disappearing. And as they're walking by, more and more walkers are starting to notice something's different. And all of a sudden, the walkers notice, hey, these aren't walkers, they're us. So the walkers start coming at them. They take off, freaking using an axe, and I don't know what it was that Glenn had, but they're just hacking away at these walkers as they run. They get to the fence, so they jump the fence, and they make it to the truck. And as they start to pull off, all these walkers are starting there. So Rick's like, hey, we got to draw them away. So they break into, I believe it was a Charger. The alarm's going off. So Glenn's driving that around the city to try to attract these walkers to get them away from everyone else. And while he's doing this, he lets the rest know, hey, get to the bay doors. We'll meet you there. So the group takes off downstairs. Merle's screaming, don't leave him. T-Dog stops. Morales like, hey, we gotta go. This is another intense scene. Oh my gosh. So T-Dog, he's like, So he goes back to try to help. He's going to unlock Merle so Merle and him can take off. But for whatever reason, he trips as he's pulling the key. And this key just happens to bounce off the ground and fall perfectly into the freaking drain hole on the roof. Merle's cussing him out, telling him he did it on purpose. T-Dog's like, I'm sorry. And he locks him up there. And they just leave him. He just leaves him. All while Merle is like losing his shit and freaking out. Glenn, he's riding around, and you see him. He stops in front of those doors, and all these walkers are following him. So he's slowly leading them away, which is pretty cool. And as T-Dog's getting down to the doors where the rest of them are, the glass doors to the other set of doors breaks open. Walkers start flooding into the building. They're all throwing their stuff in, and right as they get in and they're about to pull off, then Rick and them finally leave. We go back to the roof. You still see Merle up there screaming on the rooftop. He's cuffed, just jerking on the thing. And you're like, oh, hell. This poor guy. He's the douchebag, but is this really a way to go? Or maybe you're like, fuck him. I don't give a shit. Fuck that racist redneck. So they're in the back of this truck, and they all look at T-Dog. He's like, I lost the key. Like, my bad. So he tells them. And then they're like, where's Glenn? And the episode ends with Glenn just driving down the open highway, screaming at the top of his lungs in exhilaration. He's loving this shit. So that's how the episode ends. This was a fantastic episode. Absolutely fantastic episode. I'm ready for episode 3. I'm ready to get through this first season, and season 2 I think is where it's really going to take off. But this first season should not be sneezed at. It's fantastic. So y'all let me know down in the comments what you all think of this episode. If you want, tell me what you think of the season as a whole. So I am Zach. I'm going to let you all go. And yeah, it was fantastic. I think it's great. And it's great setup for the next episode with the reuniting of Rick and family. So we'll get there, but y'all stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, above everything else, join the nation. I'll see y'all later.